Bear with me. Mic check, mic check. Mic check, mic check. All right. All right. Shalom, shalom. Okay, this the brother Mawam coming back with another camp lesson, street preaching. All right, and want to give all praises, glory, and honor, facing the east to Yahawah, Bahasham, Yahawashi, Bahasham, Rakadash. All right, and double honors to the elder apostles, great millstone, who I learned this truth from, and to the men of the Lord scattered throughout the four corners of the earth, preaching this truth. All right, shalom to you. All right, and shalom to the hopeful elect. Okay, the men, women, and children that's going to believe in Yahawah, Bahasham, Yahawashi. Okay, that's going to believe in those names. All right. And Lord willing, the audio is good. It's supposed to be 100%. Chance of rain for the whole area. So Lord willing, I can beat that rain. All right. And I'm gonna pretty much be speaking on faith, going into those examples of faith. All right. But before I get into that, I want to go into because you still got Israelites that's walking around in their day-to-day life with fringes on, okay? And we understand, the fringes in the border of blue, that's a part of our heritage, that's a part of law, statutes, commandments. We understand that. But also the Lord gave us what? The Holy Spirit, which gives you wisdom, and discernment, and you know how to move in these last days, okay? So I'm gonna get that wise as a serpent. All right. So I'm gonna start off with this precept, and you can't listen to the false prophets. The false prophets, the Lord is not dealing with them. That's why they tell you things like, you gotta wear your fringes to sleep when you go to bed. You gotta wear your fringes in your normal day-to-day life. Okay? And that's not wisdom. Okay? That's zeal. That's zeal, but it's not wisdom. Okay, and the scriptures goes into that. They have a zeal, but not according to knowledge. All right? And don't forget, in the places of drawing water, which represents captivity, which we're in, okay, and I might get that precept, we're going to rehearse the righteous acts, so that's what we're doing out here. You're rehearsing the righteous acts. We're coming back to our heritage, all right, and the customs of being God's chosen people, the so-called blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans, okay? You're not supposed to go overboard, all right? A lot of you Israelites, you go overboard, you're high-minded, you're holier than thou. Slow your roll. We're rehearsing the righteous acts right now. Okay? So dealing with the fringes in the border of blue, okay, you're supposed to not wear it in your day-to-day life. Alright, and I'm gonna get the precepts and show you why. Alright? It's not because of the persecution that's coming. It has nothing to do with being scared of persecution. You're going to get persecuted regardless. All right? Whether you wear the fringes or not, but as long as you stand for truth, stand for Yahawah, Bahasham, Yahawashi, and long as you, opposing and speaking against the New World Order, all right, in this beast system, that persecution is going to find you regardless. All right? Because you got false prophets. They try to make it seem like the men of the Lord are scared of persecution. We're not scared of persecution. You can't avoid it. it's prophecy. All right. So this Matthew 10:16. It says, "Behold, I send you forth as sheep in the midst of wolves. Be ye therefore wise as serpents and harmless as doves." Right. So we got to be wise and harmless as doves. All right. And part of being wise is not walking around with fringes on. And I'm gonna tell you why. Because you had a brother, wearing not, I said a believer or a Hebrew Israelite that was wearing fringes, and delivering mail, okay, delivering mail, and a black woman, okay, a nigger woman that hates the Hebrew Israelites, she saw him and confronted him, about the doctrine, okay, and that situation, and she made a video about it, all right, which GMS South Carolina '08 did a sit down on it, so you can go check it out. Elder Manak Zakba. All right, so that just goes to show you put a target on your back, okay? You put a target on your back by walking around with your fringes on, okay? All right, and we keep telling you, you believers. We keep telling you Israelites, you know, we're in the valley of the shadow of death. All right, you're behind enemy lines. You're surrounded by foes, your enemy, people that don't believe in what you believe in. Okay, and it's going to get to the point. People are going to start doing drastic things. All right, you're not supposed to aid in the persecution. All right, it's going to come regardless. But damn, you making it easy. All right, that's like putting a target on you and saying, I'm right here. You know. All right, and the scriptures goes into that. Let me All right, excuse me. I'm not sick or nothing, just a lot of mucus. Um, Let me get this precept. Here you go. So this John 16:2. John 16:2. They shall put you out of the synagogues. Yea, the time cometh that whosoever killeth you will think that he doeth the Most High service or doeth God's service. All right, and history is repeating itself. The prophets of old. All right, which it wasn't just 12 disciples, 12 apostles. You got the 12 apostles, and you also got the rest of the 144,000 prophets. Okay, just like when Elijah thought he was the only prophet left, you know, the Heavenly Father, Yahawah, let him know, now I still got thousands and thousands of prophets. Okay, all right, so the 144,000 prophets, all right, they're scattered, throughout this earth, and they're teaching the same thing. Even though we're miles apart, we're still saying the same thing through the spirit and power of Yahawah, Bahasham, Yahawashi. Okay? So it says, and like it said, I'm gonna read it again. They that put you out of the synagogues, yea, the time cometh that whosoever killeth you will think that he doeth God's service. Yeah, so it's gonna get to the point, even these, so-called loving Christians, all right, that's full of emotions, and they hate the Hebrew Israelites so much, they're gonna start to do violent. They're gonna get violent. Okay, they're gonna get violent. Okay, and it says that's why debates are wicked. You're not supposed to be debating because it can always go left. All right, now it's difference of the Lord. You can a person that don't believe. I wouldn't say it like that, but an Israelite that don't know the truth, but they're being, they're being sincere. They're not bucking up against the truth. If they come up and talk to you and ask questions, that's different. You know, then we can tolerate a person like that. But for you Christians that's just trying to come up and debate the Hebrew Israelites, no, we don't. Like Elder Pastor Tar said, we're going to call the cops on you, okay? Because we don't know your intentions. All right, you can have a weapon behind your back. All right, okay. So these Christians are not really true believers. All right, they said they give mouth service. They say they talk a good talk. All right, but their actions shoot otherwise. All right, verse 3, it says, and serving, serving the Lord, serving Bahasham, Yahawashi, is more than just open the door for somebody. It's more than just saying good morning with a smile. It's more than just being nice. All right, you got to be actually living according to the scriptures to the best of your ability. All right, keeping living according to the law, statutes, commandments to the best of your ability. All right, and we already know we're not going to keep it perfect. All right, that's why Yahawah Yahawashi has given us what? Grace and mercy is to what? His elect. All right, to his servants. So long as you trying and Yahawah Yahawashi see you sincere and everything like that, the Lord is going to have mercy on you. All right, but that's different from a guy. Excuse me. A man, woman. That's an Israelite that don't give a damn about the Bible. All right, or that's just lukewarm or cold. And you really don't believe. You ran out of gas. You probably believed at one point, but now you like, it's whatever. You got that whatever. It's whatever type of way of thinking. And you can tell. Some people in the faith, you can see it on them, like, they don't truly believe no more. All right. So it says, and these things will they do unto you. All right. And these things will they do unto you, because they have not known the Father nor me. But these things have I told you, that when the time shall come, ye may remember that I told you of them. And these things I said not unto you at the beginning, because I was with you. Okay? So yeah, we're going to go through these persecutions. All right? We're going through persecution now, but it's really just scrutiny. All right? We're going through scrutiny. We dealing with the scoffers and mockers. All right. Even people at your job trying to come against you because you're a Hebrew Israelite, etc., etc. All right. So we is going through adversity and trials and tribulation, and it goes further than that. But the real persecution is on the rise. All right. And we can't escape it. Let me get Revelation. Right? This Revelation 20. This hasn't happened yet. Revelation 20 and 4. And I saw thrones, and they sat upon them, and judgment was given unto them. And I saw the souls of them that were beheaded for the witness of Yahawashi and for the word of Yahawah, and which had not worshipped the beast, neither his image, neither had received his mark upon their foreheads or in their hands, and they lived and reigned with Hamashiach, Yahawashi, 1,000 years. Okay? So that's persecution. Getting martyrdom, being beheaded for this gospel, that's persecution. All right? But it's a process that comes before that. Okay? The process that comes before that is what? The martial law, all right? The FEMA camps, the concentration camps, the drones, So that's a whole sequence of prophecy that's going to be happening in Jacob's trouble. Okay, you know that's a time of pilgrimage, a time of distress. But the Lord is going to be with those of us in His truth, Lord willing, Lord willing of the elect number. Because you can be in the truth and not be of the elect. That's the scary part of it. You know, that's why we got to constantly pray, watch and always pray. And keep ourselves, like the scripture says, unspotted from the world. Hold on, let me get this precept. James 1 and 27. Pure religion and undefiled before the Most High, Yahawah, and the Father is this, to visit the fatherless and widows in their affliction, and to keep himself unspotted from the world. Okay? Yeah, and that's what we do. We keep ourselves unspotted from the world. All right? That's why, your family and friends, they don't like you because you're not keeping Easter. You're not keeping the pagan holidays and traditions of Easter, Christmas, all right, and these other pagan holidays, all right? And it goes more than that, all right? Even these concerts, they have satanic, rituals and things like that going on with these rappers. And people saw that with, what's that rapper name? Travis Scott. People saw that with him. And I think a lot of people died. It was some years ago, but some people died at that concert. All right, and you have had a lot of people make videos on social media, and they said how the energy felt off. And it's not just those concerts. The ones at Beyonce concert. People made complaints. All right, and they said how the energy was off. They knew something was wrong. Okay, because these rappers are demonic. Okay, all your celebrities and whatnot, the God that they serve, they're satanic. They serve the elites and they worship the elites, which are Edomites, so-called white people. They worship their God. Which they're making blood sacrifices, this, that, and the third to the spiritual demon Satan. Okay? Whom Yahawah Bahasham Yahawashi is going to tell Satan to fall back. All right? And stop helping these elites. So that time is coming. Let me get another precept. All right? And the scripture says what? Then shall it be known who are my chosen. So just because you see Israelites not wearing fringes on their day-to-day life, that doesn't mean that they're not in the truth. That doesn't mean that they don't believe. All right? You Israelites that don't wear fringes on your day-to-day life, you're considered what? You're considered wise as a serpent and harmless as a dove. Okay? Bear with me. Let me get this precept. All right. Excuse me. Bear with me. It's not pulling up. All right. Here we go. There's 2nd Ezra 16 and 73. I'm going to go to the whole chapter. 2nd Ezra 16, and I'm going to start at, bear with me. I'm going to start all the way up. gonna start at 70. All right. It says, "For there shall be in every place and in the next cities a great insurrection upon those that fear the Lord." All right. So and we told you that. The men, women, and children, and like Elder Pastor Tahar said a while ago, it says those that fear the Lord. That's really, it's talking about all the Israelites. All right, even the ones that's not in the truth. Because Jacob's trouble is going to consume, the 2/3. Okay, because Jacob's trouble is not for the elect. Okay, Jacob's trouble is to purge the 2/3. All right, the ones that's not safely rooted and secure in Yahawah, Bahasham, Yahawashi. Proverbs 18:10. All right. So if you're not built up on your most holy faith, all right, and serving the Lord in spirit and in truth, you're not going to survive in Jacob's trouble. Okay. So it says, a great insurrection upon those that fear the Lord. So once again, that also includes the Israelites that's not in the truth. Okay, you Israelites that's not in the truth. All right. But we know the elites, they really want the Hebrew Israelites. Okay. They really want the prophets. All right, those that have been pushing this truth. So, and that goes into the Southern Poverty Law. All right, where they supposedly got all the hate groups or whatever. Or groups that speaks against this wicked system. All right. So it's ironic they focus on the Hebrew Israelites, but you got rednecks, you got KKK groups. They're gearing up, for a civil war. All right, they're gearing up for a purge. All right, so Esau is about to come down with great wrath. And that begins with the elites, on down to the least of these Edomites. All right, so-called white people. They're about to come down with great wrath. Okay. So why you so-called blacks, Hispanics, Native Americans, while you're focused on partying and bullshitting, your enemy, they're getting ready for a purge. All right. Esau and the other nations. All right. They're getting ready for a purge. They're getting ready for the famine that's coming. All right. These farms, they ain't no more food coming in. All right. Ain't no more food coming in by boats. All right. And the catastrophe with all these farms shutting down, catching fire, whatever. A plague hitting them. Even with the toilet paper factory burning up. So it's, you can see the famine of food, water, and resources is coming. Okay. All right. So it says, verse 71, they shall be like madmen, sparing none, but still spoiling and destroying those that fear the Lord. Okay. And like Elder Pastor Tahar said, that begins with all the Israelites. All right, because our people have a zeal, but not according to knowledge. Okay, so you Christians, when martial law happened and this, that, and the third, they're not going to spare you Christians. They're going to make you Christians take the mark of the beast. All right, the day is coming when this first system crash. Okay, they're going to this, which is purposely being done. They're going to crash this system. All right, and bring about their new world order. Okay, the great reset. Okay. And to be a part of that new system, you're gonna have to take the mark of the beast. All right, the RFID chip and that Neuralink. Okay, so you Christians are not exempt from that. All right, you Christians are not exempt from that. You know, so it don't matter what religion you in, they still gonna try to force you to take the mark of the beast. All right, and if you refuse, they're gonna kill you or attempt to kill you. All right, so it says, verse 72. For they shall waste and take away their goods and cast them out of their houses. You know, so this is a door-to-door thing. All right, that's the future. All right, and I was watching I forgot it was a video, but you had an Edomite so-called white man. He was saying that too. You know, he's basically a whistleblower, but you had this whistleblower. He was saying that you're gonna have troops. You're gonna have troops going door to door in martial law. Okay, you're gonna have your neighbors going door to door. All right, so there's going to be so much going on. All right, and the scriptures say that. You know, so you people that's going to be trusting in the police and trusting in the military, you thinking they coming for your good, but nah, they about to fuck over you. They're gonna take away your rights, whatever, the freedom you thought you had, and they gonna seize your belongings, your house. So this is the future. Okay? So the Bible is telling you they're gonna go door to door. All right? You know, that's great information to have. They're gonna go door to door. All right? So that's why we gotta trust in Yahawah, Bahasham, Yahawashi. Okay? It says, all right, it says, then shall they be known who are my chosen, and they shall be tried as the gold in the fire. All right, hear, O ye my beloved, and that show you that the believers, all right, you know, the Israelites that believe and worship, you know, Yahawah, Bahasham, Yahawashi, okay, in spirit and in truth, you know, you still got to go through Jacob's trouble. You still got to live through the great tribulation. Okay? So it says, hear, O ye my beloved, saith the Lord, behold, the days of trouble are at hand, but I will deliver you from the same. Right? And that deliverance is only going to come from Yahawah, Bahasham, Yahawashi. Okay? Divine intervention. Okay? And that's what we need, you know? No amount of stockpiling, no amount of preparation is going to save you from what's to come. Okay? Now, we're not demonizing, nothing wrong with, you know, preparing for hard times. Okay? Nothing wrong for that, but nothing wrong with that, but you can't put your trust in it. You know, you're not supposed to put your trust in 14 stockpiles of water. You're not supposed to put your trust in your guns and bullets. Okay? You know, you're not supposed to put your trust in those things. All right? And none of that is what's going to save you. Okay? All right? Because everything that's happening is the Lord is causing it. You know, so therefore it's a spiritual ordeal. Okay? And this precept right here proves it. Let me get it. It's Amos, let me get the whole chapter. All right, this Amos chapter 5, and I'm gonna start at 18. All right, that temperature done dropped too. But Amos 5 and 18, it says, woe unto you that desire the day of the Lord. To what end is it for you? The day of the Lord is darkness and not light. As if a man did flee from a lion and a bear met him, or went into the house and leaned his hand up on the wall and a serpent bit him. Shall not the day of the Lord be darkness and not light? Even very dark and no brightness in it. Yeah. So no amount of preparation can save you from that. So that clearly show you how the spiritual realm is controlling the physical realm. The Lord is going to have what? Demons making all this happen. Okay? Okay, demons, evil spirits, or evil angels, however you want to call it. These demons is going to be making sure all this happen. Like the movie Bird Box. Okay, I gotta rewatch that movie too. All right, but the movie Bird Box, it showed you how the demons was making people crash out. So it's spiritual. All right, and I'm gonna get there right quick in the apocrypha. Bear with me. It won't pull up. Bear with me. There we go. So this Sirach chapter 39. If it come up. And I seen the video Elder Pastor Hard did too about they're hacking, I guess, the online Bible. Okay. All right, here you go. So this Sirach chapter 39. I'm gonna start at 28. All right. Sirach, also known as Ecclesiasticus 39 and 28. There be spirits that are created for vengeance, which in their fury lay on sore strokes. In the time of destruction, they pour out their force and appease the wrath of him that made them. It says, fire and hell and famine and death, all these were created for vengeance. Right, so we're living in the last days. We're living in the last days, the end times. All right, and the Lord is what? He's pouring out his vengeance on the earth. The Lord is bringing plagues on the earth. That's why people are dying left and right. So it says, verse 30, it says, teeth of wild beasts and scorpions and serpents and the sword, punishing the wicked to the destruction. They shall rejoice in his commandment, and they shall be ready upon earth when need is. All right, and that proves, and you have events that happen in the earth that prove that. Okay. Because I remember years ago, I seen a video and it went viral. But and I'm pretty sure every person has seen it by now. But you had a guy walking down the street at night, and the guy, it had like a shadow. It had a shadow or a spirit that had hopped on him and made him go break into somebody's car. Okay? So that shows you how these demons can hop on people and make them do stuff. Right? Verse 31, it says, and that's why we stay prayed up in Bahasham, Yahawashi. Because those spiritual attacks, they do happen. Okay? Alright, it says, they shall rejoice in his commandment, and they shall be ready upon earth when need is, and when their time is come, they shall not transgress his word. Okay? And that's pretty much it. Alright, so yeah, nothing happens without the Lord giving it to say so. Alright? So I'm gonna pretty much I'm gonna get one more precept dealing with the why you shouldn't be wearing fringes walking around. Alright? Battlements. Bear with me. So this Ecclesiasticus, this Ecclesiasticus 9-16. All right, and I don't know if any other brother phone be doing, but for some reason they don't want to pull up the chapter and verse. Yeah, and I see exactly what Elder Pastor Tahar was saying. All right, Barrow, I'm making sure this person don't hit my car. Yeah, it won't pull it up. Yeah. Hey, that famine of the word is coming, bro. Amos 5:18, that famine of the word is coming. All right? Yeah, it literally won't pull it up. All right, but so Ecclesiasticus 9-13, it goes into what? The battlements of the city. All right? You know, and it goes into why you should move with wisdom, all right, in this place. That's why you shouldn't be walking around, you know, with fringes on. Okay? And that's why you should what? Never argue with the police as well. You know, whenever you get pulled over, you do what the police tell you to do. All right, and that's what the precept was going into. But it really won't pull up. All right, I can see it, but whenever I click on the chapter, it won't even come up. All right, but Ecclesiasticus 9-13, you can come through.
Thank you.
You're welcome. It says, keep thee far from the man that have power to kill, so thou shalt not doubt the fear of death, and if thou come unto him, make no fault, lest he take away. And it says, take away thy life presently. All right? I'm trying to pull up the whole chapter. Yeah, Satan ain't playing around. All right, and it just did this too. Here you go. I had to keep clicking on different sites, but I got it. Yeah, so that famine of the word is close. You know, March 1st was supposed to be the kick in, you know, for the 15% ethanol. All right, which that's going to completely ruin people's cars. Okay, you know, that's going to ruin people's engines. You know, it's not good for your sport cars and whatnot. All right, and most people don't have the money to fix their cars up. So that's why you see a lot of people when they got dents and stuff in their car, The reason why they don't get it fixed is because they don't got the money to. All right. So it says, Sirach 9 and 13, keep thee far from the man that have power to kill, so shalt thou not doubt the fear of death. And if thou come unto him, make no fault, lest he take away thy life presently. Remember that thou goest in the midst of snares, and that thou walkest upon the battlements of the city. Okay? And that's right. That's why we tell you Israelites, don't be walking around with fringes on. Okay? Because this very precept. All right? So now I want to go into faith. Now I'm about to switch gears. I want to go into faith. Okay? And the type of faith you got to have. Okay? I'm going to make sure the live going good. All right? I'm about to get some examples. 3 examples of the men of old that had faith. Okay? All right, bear with me. So this is the book of Acts, chapter 28. All right, I'm going to start from the top. This is the book of Acts, chapter 28. Acts chapter 28 from the top, it says, and when they were escaped, then they knew that the island was called Melita, and the barbarous people shewed us no little kindness, for they kindled a fire and received us, every one, because of the present rain and because of the cold. And when Paul had gathered a bundle of sticks and laid them on the fire, there came a viper out of the heat and fastened on his hand. It says, so this is a venomous snake. All right, that had got on Paul's hand, and it says, and when the barbarians saw the venomous beast hang on his hand, they said among themselves, no doubt this man is a murderer. And that shows you how spiritual our people was. You Israelites, you're not spiritual no more, but that shows you how spiritual our people was. Our people back then, they understood reincarnation. They understood reincarnation, regeneration. They understood you reap what you sow. Okay? So it says, and it says, no doubt this man is a murderer, whom though he had escaped the sea, yet vengeance suffereth not to live. Right? And that's another example. The disciples, they asked the Lord, did the blind man sin or his parents? That's spiritual. Okay, that proves that reincarnation, regeneration is real. Okay, and the Lord can judge you for something you did in your past life, all right, or a couple past lives back. The Lord can judge you in your present life for that. Okay, so it says, verse 5, and he shook off the beast into the fire and felt no harm. All right, you know how much faith you gotta have, because most of us never touched a snake before, let alone a venomous snake. Okay, but you know how much faith that you gotta have in Bahasham, Yahawashi, for a snake to attack you and wrap its body around you and you don't freak out. Okay, and the scriptures go into that. In Sirach, the 2nd chapter, I'm gonna get it, Lord willing. All right, the scripture talk about make not haste in time of trouble. Make not haste in time of trouble, meaning don't panic. All right, don't panic. Because those type of situations is gonna arise in the upcoming days. So your faith has got to be unmovable. Okay? Your faith in the Lord got to be unmovable. All right? Like Apostle Paul. So it says, all right, and he shook off the beast into the fire and felt no harm. All right? How bet they looked when he should have swollen or fallen down dead suddenly, but after they had looked a great while and saw no harm came to him, they changed their minds and said that he was a god. you know, so the the people thought, Apostle Paul was a god just because a venomous snake didn't bite him and kill him. But his faith in Yahawah Bahasham Yahawashi, that's what delivered him. Okay? And like one account, the Lord roughly paraphrase, and I might get it, but the Lord told someone, thy faith has made you whole. Okay? So your level of faith, that's why the scriptures tell you to build up yourselves in your most holy faith. Okay? Because these miracles, they're going to happen and come based on your level of faith. Okay? So those men that get spiritual power, your faith is on another level. All right? For the Lord to entrust in you with that spiritual power to do what he wants you to do with it. Okay? So it says, verse 7, in the same quarters were possessions of the chief man of the island, whose name was Publius, who received us and lodged us 3 days courteously. Okay? Excuse me. And it came to pass that the father of Publius lay sick of a fever and of a bloody flux, to whom Paul entered in and prayed and laid his hands on him and healed him. So when this was done, others also which had diseases in the island came and were healed. That's right. That's spiritual power as well. Being able to pray over someone, you know, being able to pray, and we're going to get that spiritual power. All right? Brothers got that spiritual power now. Okay? And that's not to say like their hands be glowing and things like that. But brothers, the scriptures talk about the fervent prayer. Let me get that. Here you go. There's James 5:16. All right. But in that day, in JT, yeah, our hands probably gonna be glowing. All right. James 5:16. Confess your faults one to another, pray one for another, that you may be healed. The effectual fervent prayer of a righteous man availeth much. So yes, brothers do have tiny bits of spiritual power right now. The ability to prophesy, the ability to have no gall found in your mouth. Okay? The ability to pray for men, women, and children in the faith, and the Lord heal them from whatever sickness they have. Okay? But the Lord is going to turn it up. Okay? That spiritual power, that Holy Spirit, the Lord is going to turn it up. All right? On the hopeful elect, your Lord willing them of that number. All right? Then you're going to have hopeful elect members getting those abilities. Okay? Those, supernatural spiritual power abilities. All right? So it's going to get turned up, and you have scientists, all right, and they're talking about how in their words they say the frequency of everything is being raised. Okay, in so many words, the frequency of everything is being raised. And I seen a video on it, but I can't really repeat everything that the Edomite so-called white man said, but I might do a sit down on it. Okay, and that lines up, because the closer, Yahawashi and the angels get to this earth, because the guy was speaking on the different accounts, Simeon Toko, and other events similar to that, and how the frequency is being raised, so to speak. Okay. And it has been not to get into Esau's science or whatever, but Esau's science, and sometimes we speak on it to prove the Bible. Okay, sometimes we speak on it to prove the Bible. All right, but they have proven that humans have a low level of I think you call it telekinesis or something like that. All right, telepathic ability. Okay, y'all can come through. Yeah, so those frequencies of those abilities is going to be raised. All right, it's going to be normal in the world to come. Okay. All right, so spiritual power is a real thing, and I can kind of get into that. Let's see what I want. All right, this second Esdras is acting up again. All right, it brought up Isaiah 40 and 31. Shit, that's the spirit. Because I was gonna go to that precept anyway, but it says, "But they that wait upon the Lord Yahawah, shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint." That's right. That's right. So that's going into spiritual power. But that's going to be when the Israelites get that immortality. Okay, those new bodies. Okay. Of course, the law, statutes, commandments going to be programmed within the Israelites, beginning with the elect, and they're never going to sin. Okay, and the Lord is going to turn them into immortals. All right. All right. So the second Esdras 7 and 43. Let me check the time. Okay. Second Esdras 7 and 43. "But the day of doom shall be the end of this time, and the beginning of immortality for to come, wherein corruption is past." All right. One more time, and I'm gonna say what I want to say. "But the day of doom shall be the end of this time, and the beginning of the immortality for to come, wherein corruption is past." So that's why people are experiencing that shift. All right, time is going by faster. All right, you're seeing signs and wonders in the heavens. You're seeing the chariots, so-called UFOs, which is the vehicles of the Lord and the angels. Okay. All right. And they're making all type of new discoveries. They're finding new creatures, etc., etc. Okay. So it says, intemperance is at an end, infidelity is cut off, righteousness is grown, and truth is sprung up. Okay. And this truth, this gospel, has been preached. Now the end of the world is happening. Okay. And once again, I'm gonna say it and continue to say it. I completely agree with Elder Apostle Tahar. When he said that the elect is already sealed. The Lord just building them up. All right, the Lord just purifying them. Okay. And let's get another precept. Let's see what time it is. Might have time to get. Yeah, I'm gonna get one more dealing with Elijah. All right, bear with me. So this First Kings chapter 19. I might have to start. All right, I'm gonna have to go to the whole chapter. Bear with me. Here you go. So this First Kings chapter 19. Starting from the top, it says, "And Ahab told Jezebel all that Elijah had done." All these pop-ups, excuse me. And Ahab told Jezebel all that Elijah had done, and withal how he had slain all the prophets um, with the sword. And it says, "Then Jezebel sent a messenger unto Elijah, and saying, So let the gods do to me, and more also, if I make not thy life as the life of one of them by tomorrow about this time." You know, so the wicked king Ahab and Jezebel was trying to kill Elijah. All right, and they was killing, all the prophets during that time, or a lot of prophets. And it says, phone not moving. It says, verse 3, "And when he saw that, he arose and went for his life, and came to Beersheba, which belongeth to Judah, and left his servant there. But he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness, and came and sat down under a juniper tree. And he requested for himself that he might die, and said, It is enough now, O Lord Yahawah, to take away my life, for I am no better than my fathers." So Elijah was in heaviness. All right. And being a prophet is a heavy lot. Okay. Verse 5. "And as he lay and slept under a juniper tree, behold, then an angel touched him and said unto him, Arise and eat. And he looked, and behold, there was a cake baking on the coals, and a cruse of water at his head. And he did eat and drink, and laid him down again." Right. So the Lord provided for Elijah. Okay. Yahawah Bahasham Yahawashi provided for Elijah, and the Lord is going to do it again for the men, women, and children in these last days. That's of the elect. Okay. And Lord willing, me and mines is of that elect number. Lord willing. So it says, so the Lord not going to do that for all Israelites. The Lord is not going to do that for all people of the earth. Like Christians say, no. Yahawah Bahasham Yahawashi is going to do that for the elect, and the elect only. Okay? So it says, "And the angel of the Lord came again the second time, and touched him, and said, Arise and eat, because the journey is too great for thee. And he arose and did eat and drink, and went in the strength of that meat 40 days and 40 nights unto Horeb, the mount of Yahawah." You see? And the Lord gonna do that's a miracle. You know? You never know. You might only be eating once a week. In JT off the grid, but the Lord is sustaining you the whole time. Even though you may be eating once a week, you're not getting hungry for a whole week. The Lord gonna be performing many miracles. Okay, just like that. know, now of course, you know, brothers and sisters, you want to you want to eat consecutively. We already know. All right, the Lord know your personal, you know, desires or whatnot. But Yahawah Bahasham Yahawashi is going to save you the way they're going to save us. The Lord willing them of their elect number. Okay, the most important thing we got to do is have faith, believe in Yahawah Bahasham Yahawashi. Okay, it says, excuse me, the phone not moving. Here you go. All right, and he came hither unto a cave and lodged there, and behold, the word of the Lord Yahweh came to him, and he said unto him, what dost thou here, Elijah? I mean, it's like, what doest thou here, Elijah? And he said, I have been very jealous for the Lord Yahweh, my power of hosts, for the children of Israel have forsaken thy covenant, thrown down thine altars, and slain thy prophets with the sword, and I, even I only am left, and they seek my life to take it away. And he said, go forth and stand upon the mount before the Lord Yahweh, and behold, the Lord passed by, and a great and strong wind rent the mountains, and brake in pieces the rocks before the Lord Yahweh. For the Lord was not in the wind, and after the wind an earthquake. But the Lord Yahweh was not in the earthquake, and after the earthquake a fire. But the Lord Yahweh was not in the fire, and after the fire a still small voice. Excuse me, I'm trying to scroll up. And it says, and it was so, when Elijah heard it, that he wrapped his face in his mantle, and went out and stood in the entering in of the cave. And behold, there came a voice unto him and said, what doest thou here, Elijah? Okay, I'm gonna read a little bit more. It says, and he said, I have been very jealous for the Lord Yahweh, power of hosts, because the children of Israel have forsaken thy covenant, thrown down thine altars, and slain thy prophets with the sword, and I, even I only am left, and they seek my life to take it away. Okay, and that's pretty much it. All right, that's pretty much all I wanted. Okay, so those are examples of Yahawah Bahasham Yahawashi taking care of the prophets, the believers. All right, and that also includes the men, women, and children. That's going to believe in Yahawah Bahasham Yahawashi. Okay, so that's the name of the game. Have faith and endure to the end that you may be saved. All right, we want to end it and give all praises to Yahawah Bahasham Yahawashi, Bahasham Arakakadash, and double honors to the elder apostles, great millstone, ruling teach well, and honors and salutations to the men of the Lord doing the same. Shalom.